I'd been hoping for a return visit to Loch Shiel for a while, so when the forecast for Friday looked good for that area, I planned on getting up at 5 a.m. and travel there for an 8 a.m. start. Unfortunately, when the alarm went off at 5, I totally ignored it as I was nice and warm in bed and fell asleep again. Fortunately, Saturday's forecast was even better. I didn't want to risk missing it, so decided to travel there on a Friday and spend the night overnight in the car. So I was in place for an early start on Saturday morning. I travelled by car and arrived at Acharico on Friday afternoon. So to pass the rest of the day, I decided to go on an 8-mile hike to the Singing Sands. Winter blubber has left me feeling unfit, so it's time to exercise the excess blubber away. I parked up at Arravigeg Farm on Kentra Bay and started hiking my way on an old Land Rover track. It was a beautiful, cold but sunny day. The tide was out, leaving nothing but mud banks to mark the area of the shallow bay. The track then winds its way through a forest where ancient trees and rocks are covered in green moss. I only carried a camera as I wanted to keep the video equipment's batteries fully charged for the following day. It's certainly a very scenic walk to start walking winter blubber away. At times I felt I was being watched, and then came across a small group of deer who had been watching and waiting for a moment to cross the track. It was still and silent in this enchanted forest, except for the occasional distant drumming of a woodpecker pecking wood in the higher trees. Finally, having walked 4 miles, I cleared the forest, and stepping into the open, I surveyed the Singing Sands. They were silent for me, but the sound of the sea was music to my ears. I heard the islands of Skye, Egg and Rum calling my name above the noise of the waves breaking in the beach. I walked the sands, hoping I could visit the islands again come the summer. But first I wanted to travel the length of Lovely Loch Shiel, so walked back to the car. I parked up on a lonely lay-by high in a hill and watched the sun set on the hills that surrounded me. It was a very cold night, but I had 2 sleeping bags and a duvet, so was snug as a bug in a rug. This time I had no problem getting out of bed in the back of the car, and was met by this misty and frosty scene, but at least I was in Acharico, and that's where I really wanted to be. So started setting up the boat as I surveyed the lovely scenery. The early morning sun soon cleared the mist, but the frost lingered longer. However, I was really warming to the thought of a lovely day in Loch Shiel. Soon I was on my merry way, as clouds and hills reflected in the water's surface, which for me was like having a wet dream come true. The western end of Loch Shiel is extremely shallow, with 3 or 4 mud banks only a foot or so below the surface, so I kept a slow displacement speed. Not that I would have wanted to hurry through such a pretty place. I was savouring the moment. I started to catch up with the still clearing morning mist, so went even slower to give it time to clear, especially when the loch bottom weeds started to tickle the bottom of the boat, as it was so shallow. Locals have marked the shallowest banks with buoys, and occasionally 2 buoys together indicate the channel to go through. Even then, it's only 2 foot deep. So until the deeper water comes, only a fool would go in the plane, unless they're very familiar with the area. Eventually I reached about 30 or more feet of water, so went in the plane. The stunning scenery floated past, perfectly reflected in the stationary water surface. This herd of coos totally ignored me and my noisy outboard as I went past. But I suspect that they too thought it was a lovely day to be beside the loch. I spotted a large stone cross on a little hill near the shore, so landed to have a look and see if I could suss out what it was all about. It turned out to be a memorial to Philip Howard, who presumably, because of a date of 1919, was killed in the First World War. His father, who built the memorial for his son, certainly picked a lovely spot. After paying my respects, I returned to the boat and continued on my way. A little further on, the loch narrows and has a slight dogleg in its length. In the centre of the loch lies Eilean Finian, or better known as the Green Island. I was going to land here, but when I saw a couple of people already there, I decided to pass it by and visit it on my return. Once past the dogleg, the views eastward start to open up and the loch becomes much deeper. White pebble beaches can now be seen on the shoreline, backed by ancient sessile oak trees. To the right, the wide mouth of the River Pollock intersects the loch. Loch Shiel, at 17 miles in length, is the fourth longest freshwater loch in Scotland. With no roads on its northern banks, and only a private forestry road on its southern shore, it is very remote and seen only by a few people using boats or by cycling the forest ways. Parts of the old Caledonia forest can still be seen in this area, and around the islands the rare black-throated divers arrive in spring. Golden eagles are often seen circling the updrafts and the hills, which makes it a special protected area. Looking at all the lovely scenery floating by began to give me a thirst, so when I came across the next pebble beach, I decided to land for a short leg stretch and a coffee. I doubt if I could have picked a prettier pebble beach on such a perfect day if I had tried. I happily sat in the warmth of the early March sun, slurping my coffee until it was done. Then, refreshed, rejuvenated and relieved, I continued on my way. Approximately halfway along the loch on the north shore is a very remote cottage called Gaskin. It was here that the well-known naturalist Mike Tompkins wrote his classic book A Last Wild Place. However, long before Mike lived here, the oak forests provided Clan Ranald with the wood to build their traditional long wooden boats called burlins, which sailed the loch in times gone by. To the east of Gaskin, the hillsides steepen, giving the impression of hemming in the long loch. Then a gap in the hills gives access to lovely Glen Allydale. The rugged remoteness of the area really shows now. Although it's a very serene scene on such a sunny day, I'm quite sure it'll be a wild place on a windy day. Starting to suffer coffee withdrawal symptoms again, I decided to pull over onto another beautiful pebble beach. And what a stunning spot to stop and slurp coffee on such a warm, calm, sunny day. Then, when I was all slurped out, I clambered back into the boat to head to the very eastern end of the loch, which is not so far now. The monument at the loch end commemorates the spot where Bonnie Prince Charlie landed to raise his standard for the Jacobite rebellion, which ended in disaster for him at Culloden in 1745. It was the last pitched battle held in British soil. Probably just as famous with the younger generation as the Glenfinnan Viaduct, which featured in the Harry Potter films. After a quick look around, without landing, as I was clean out of coffee, I started making my way back down the loch. I didn't do much filming on the way back down, as I had captured it all on the way there. However, I did stop in the Green Island to revisit the ancient burial grounds and remains of the monastery. It was my last stop of the day before clambering back into the boat and returning to a caracal, then heading for home. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.